Welcome into episode 3 of Hoops Forum, presented by Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Randy Sherman. Before we get started here, I want to thank our sponsors over at 323 Sports. If you're in the market for a team dealer, look no further than 323 Sports. Whether it's uniforms, team gear, spirit wear, sports equipment, they can do it all for you. So find out more about 323 Sports, visit 323sports.com, or you can get in contact with a team rep at sales@323sports.com. As always, we'd love to hear your conversations with us. We're trying to get more of you involved, and hopefully if you have a comment or maybe you have a question that you'd like to ask, all you need to do to get involved in this broadcast is to reply to the post there on Twitter, and we will integrate you into our conversation today. Today's topic is one that is near and dear probably to Randy and I, probably the best way to describe it. We're going to talk about pace and space offense. Randy, I know your history with this dates back probably a little bit further than mine, or maybe considerably further than mine. And I know that because a lot of the stuff that we do here at Bob Jones, we stole from you. So, when did you start looking at pace and space stuff, and how has it become kind of a main tenet of the things that you're teaching other coaches?
Yeah, it probably goes back further than you, simply because I'm much older than you. But I would say, this conversation today, we're going to kind of break down into two parts: the pace, then the space. I would say the pace part, probably for me as a coach, dates back. I'd say maybe early 2000s. I think. Maybe a little bit before. There's always been teams, whether you go back to the old Loyola Marymount teams or Arkansas Razorbacks, 40 Minutes of Hell, things like that. Like the playing with tempo is not new. I would say, though, there was a team when Roy Williams was at Kansas, like his last few years there at Kansas before he took over at North Carolina. The teams with like Nick Collison, Kirk Heinrich, Jeff Boschee, those teams, they ran that Carolina break like really fast, and that was sort of their hallmark, if you will, of their play. Being in Big 12 country down here in Texas, I saw them play a lot, and that's probably when I was like that idea of transitioning from defense to offense at hypersonic speed was something I wanted to brand into the teams I coached. How that's looked over the years and sort of like the things that are talked about now have changed, but just the general idea of having speed and transition from defense to offense, I'd say it dates back to around that time for me.
We know this is something that people care about, one, because of the amount of people that are even paying attention to this and watching this right now. But we had our weekly poll, went out and asked about primary style of offense. I got some responses that maybe said that they're doing a little bit of each of these. But for a lot of you, moving towards kind of that conceptual offense, one of the things that I want us to make sure that we're communicating, because again, some may think that we're just talking here about half court. You already touched on this a little bit, but we're talking right from when your team goes from defense to offense, and that includes more than just half court offense, right?
Yeah, I would say pace and space is mostly a marketing buzzword or something, like it can mean a lot of different things. I've seen teams running Princeton, which you typically associate with maybe like a more of a ball control slow, like playing that in the 80-90 points per game. They're just doing that thing at pace, at speed. So I would say definitely it begins with the moment you win the ball back, however that happens. So if you win it back through a defensive rebound, you win it back after you get scored on and you're inbounding, the moment you win the ball back is when, to me, pace and space starts to take over.
One of the things that's been valuable for us, since we've started to run this, we've actually had fewer teams press us, teams that are like primarily press teams. We just played one this past weekend, and I think with about like 7 or 8 minutes left in the game, they quit pressing. And this is a team that presses literally 40 minutes every single game. And because of the pace at which we played and the space that we created through the different types of cuts that we'll get into in a few moments, they basically just quit pressing. And I've seen that now. We've only been doing it for 2 years, but if you do play with the right kind of pace and the right kind of player movement, it does eliminate a lot of it doesn't matter whether it's a man press or a zone press. You eliminate a lot of the pressing situations. So maybe for some that are thinking it's just half court, I would encourage you to, and we can talk more about this later, or somebody can reach out to us individually. But what does that look like press break wise and moving fluidly from your full court to your half court? I think one of the things that was taught to me and was told to me when we first started with this, don't necessarily think of this as we cross half court, we start doing this. It starts wherever the defense forces you to start it.
Sure.
And that was huge for us because, like I said, it really rendered every kind of press useless past that. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the teams that press, the rhythm of the game that they're depending upon is they score, and you take a moment to get the ball in bounds or set up your little press offense thingy, and that feels natural to the coach to do that. But what that moment of intermission, if you will, allows is it allows the press to get arranged and organized, and if they're forming a diamond or a 2-2-1 or something like that, your lack of pace in that moment allows them to organize their defense and get their press set and organized. So I found one of the quickest things to kind of like you're describing to get teams to just quit pressing was the speed at which we got the ball back in bounds after we got scored upon. We use a teaching phrase called get it out, get it in, get it up. Get it out of the net, get it back in bounds, and get it up the court like
that's
that.
Good.
Get it out, get it in, get it up. And a lot of times a team would have every intention of pressing, but they're used to that second or two after they scored that you build your little 1-4 press break or ready break, and the guys stack on the elbows and split ready break. Like they're dependent upon that to organize their defense. So get it out of the net, get it in, and fire it up the sideline before they even get a chance to organize that press. That might be the best press offense there is.
Yeah. So that transitions us. That wasn't supposed to be a pun, but I guess it is. Into exactly what we want to talk about next, and that is, moving into that transition phase. Being careful before we even talk about that. Maybe though, this isn't just about like playing fast and the correlation between playing fast and playing with pace, and then even the idea of, well, if we're going to be a winning team, then we have to play with pace. I think you even had some numbers as far as like win-loss correlation, playing fast or playing with pace, and making sure that we differentiate those.
Anything I have as far as numbers would just be me reading it. I'm not a math guy really, so would be me reading someone else's work. But I would just say that people that share information about basketball, and I've probably been guilty of this also, so I can say this without being accusatory of someone else. We talk about this is the way you should play, this is the right way to play, and I really resist. If I catch myself doing that, I try to back my words up. So I would say that good is good at any speed. There's examples of teams that walk the ball up the floor and call a play every time and play in the 40s and 50s that win and win big. And there's examples of teams that are the opposite of that win. There's examples of both that lose. If you just look at and it's a little bit of survivorship bias, but if you look at the past champions, we've had Virginia, who's a slow-paced team. We've had North Carolina in recent years, who's fast, and Villanova, who's kind of right in the middle. They're 1 year they were on the slow end, and 2 years later when they won it, they were a little bit faster. And so it can be anything. So this conversation is definitely not like, hey, you got to play this way if you want to be good. I coach this way because I liked it. That's really that simple, and the players enjoyed it, and the players had fun playing it. So that's what the rationale as far as that goes, rather than making this a claim that this is like the only route to championship or something.
Is there still validity in the fact that if we are playing faster, then we're generating more possessions, which gives us more opportunities to score?
Yeah, maybe. I would say it definitely lessens the value of each possession. So if we've got the same 40-minute game and you're playing it with 90 possessions and someone is playing it with 60 possessions, then my turnover at 60 possessions, it cost us more than yours at 90 possessions. So the value, just supply and demand. There's a greater supply of possession, so they have less individual value. So that's really it. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell.
This is just for I like to ask this from time to time, but maybe those that are watching, just per reply, how many possessions per game you have, and maybe differentiate if you're coaching at the high school level or the college level. Randy, when you are playing this style of offense, is it wise to shoot try to go for a goal, or is that?
I've done that.
How about this? Like, do you end up seeing over time, we end up with this amount of possessions?
That's probably more a better way to say it. I didn't make a goal of playing at a certain number of possessions because to a degree, that's opponent driven, right? Like I don't have complete control over that. I have what I would like to happen, but they made varsity too. They got a scholarship too. They got drafted to whatever level you're coaching at. That cliche can work. Like I don't have full say so in how fast they want to go. I'd love to create some turnovers but they got to turn it over, or I would love to play fast, but they have a say so in that because they do a good job of getting back on defense and making us work for a better shot deeper into the shot clock or deeper into the possession. So I personally stayed away from like, okay, guys or girls, we're trying to get 78 possessions or whatever. But I did find that over the course of the season and years of doing this, that there was like a number around that 70-ish plus or minus in a high school game that you could expect to play at, maybe even a little bit higher in some games.
Yeah. Maybe any other main thoughts that you have with this connected to pace, suggestions, or even thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the main thought that I had around pace was, again, like I said, like you'll hear some coaches like in a fast break style, they talk about these cumulative totals they want to reach. Like we want to attempt 90 shots, or we're trying to get certain amount of possessions in a game and things like that. I didn't approach it that way. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just personally not how I approached it. But again, because it's opponent driven. Like they have a say so in it. So what I was interested in branding into my team was the things that we have a say so in. And really our goal simply for pace was that's where we score. Get down there as fast as we can. We had some mechanisms in place to quantify that. For example, we wanted to get the ball over the half court line in less than 4 seconds. Simple, preferably airborne over the half court line in 4 seconds or less. So, beyond that, then my opponent has a say so. So basically the way I tended to think about it had nothing to do with we want to get a shot in 7 seconds or less, or we're trying to get 95 field goal attempts in a game. It had nothing to do with that. Our transition offense is the enforcement arm of your transition defense. Simply put, we're going to make you get back. We're going to find out if you have a problem in that area. We're going to find that out. That's simply, and if you do a good job getting back, then we're going to flow right into our offense. If you don't, we'll take the easy basket. My transition offense is the enforcement arm of your transition defense. So, I found that a lot of, especially coaching on the girls' side, no offense to anyone, but that a lot of coaches didn't know they had a transition defense problem because the rest of their schedule doesn't enforce their transition defense. They get a rebound, they walk it back up. They don't even have to coach that part of the game. Well, tonight you do. Tonight you do, or tonight you have better done that. So that was all I was wanting from our transition offense. No thing about crazy number of shot attempts, because what I found then is our shot quality. Like, oh, coach said just shoot 95 times a game. That's no, that ain't it, right? But that's what I was looking for.
I think from a coach's perspective and trying to be the one that's enforcing that, I would say for a college coach, that's the hardest thing, especially we're dealing this year with a lot of freshmen and sophomore, and they segment, whether or not they know that they're doing this, they segment the four different parts. And so okay, it's like you said, the ball goes through the basket for the other team. Okay. And we take like 3 seconds for us to transition offense.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get the players to speed up, it actually a lot of times is just speed. And that scares some coaches because then they think faster and make more mistakes. But it really is just about like, okay, on to the next thing. And if you can get them to get on to the next thing, and then, like you said, get the ball out, get it in, and then get it up, it becomes more of like a pattern rather than even like going faster. They just transition faster and quicker to the next thing.
If there's anyone listening who's taking notes or has any intention to take some notes, this is the coaching phrase that served me better than anything, and that's get to what's next first.
That's good.
Get to what's next first. That helped me in coaching defense, coaching offense, coaching transition. So in this moment, we just got scored on, or we just got a defensive rebound. What's next? For us, it's offense. For them, it's defense. So we want to get to offense before they get to defense. Simply put, that's it.
Yeah.
And if they do their job, then that may segue us into the next part of the conversation of where I think it's very important to connect your transition offense to your half-court offense. So there's no rearrangement, there's no interruption, there's no having to plug back into the coach. Okay, we got the ball down there, and now I'm having to plug back into my coach to see what he or she wants to do. We ran, but we also ran to certain landmarks on the court so that if the defense does its job, they do get back. They did get to what's next, at least at the same time we did. Then we can connect right into the next phase of the game, which would be half court O for us and half court C for them. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about that, the spacing part. I have a feeling that probably most people watching this are caring primarily about the spacing part of things, whereas the two of them do really need to go together. But once you get to the half court that we're transitioned and now we're in the half court, like spacing and kind of the ideas connected to some of the prerequisites for having good space. I think sometimes we think it's just I go run to spots. Is it that simple, or is there more that needs to be considered?
Well, I would say that your spacing in your half court is sort of the table is set for that in transition. So in the moment we get the ball back, defensive rebound or get scored upon, we talk about the players as we transition to get width, then depth, width, then depth, like you just called it up on the screen. So you see players 2 and 3 there creating width. And in the first frame, at least with the rim runner, 5 has no width mandate. He's running just depth. So width, then depth for 2 and 3, just depth for player 5. Width for player 1, getting to the sideline to where he or she can receive an outlet. So width and depth. Player speed, ball speed. So player speed just is a fancy way of saying sprint, run, get your ass down there, right? Like fast. Ball speed is a way of saying, all right, we either want to pass ahead. If we can't pass ahead, we want to attack with a dribble. Both of those accomplish ball speed. So width, depth, player speed, ball speed. That's the rubric by which we grade transition possession. So we get a rebound or we get scored on, I'm watching my guys or my girls. Okay, you did a good job with depth, but you're not wide enough. You're hugging the volleyball line instead of the sideline, or you're kind of looks a little joggy to me. Like I'm not seeing heels flipping glutes and elbows driving. I'm not seeing the biomechanical landmarks of someone sprinting. I'm seeing like a sidewalk jogger from you. I need to see sprinting biomechanics, not jogging biomechanics. So speed, width, depth, ball speed. And then ball speed, like, all right, I'm talking to my point guard or my outlet guy. Like you could have thrown it ahead. You had a man up the sideline, or what I call the rail. You had a man up the rail wide open, and you didn't advance the ball with the pass. You dribbled it instead, which slowed down the ball speed. Any pass is faster than John Wall dribbling, right? So those are the qualities we're looking for. That sets the table for us to, quote, show up in the half court with width and depth and space and all of those things.
And then once you get to the half court, kind of the spacing components of maybe either how to start with good space or maybe then how to even create the space once things get going. What are some of the tenets for that?
I would say it's probably first important to maybe have to do a little, I don't know, maybe definition or defining some terms. I catch myself sometimes using these two words interchangeably, and I try to correct myself the difference between positioning and spacing. So really, and I've been guilty of that already this morning. It's early. I haven't had enough coffee yet. So we're trying to show up in the half court with good positioning. And to me, positioning is simply put is our spots where we stand. Deep corner at rim depth, in the high slot, NBA 3 or higher, something like that. Wing, if we're 5 out, we may have guys on the wing spots, or the high wing or something like that. So that's our positioning. Our spacing is impacted by our ability to score from range. So we can have good positioning. Any team on planet Earth, whether they have no shooters, no, big sloppy bigs who, whatever, like any team can have good positioning. They can stand with width and depth and all of those qualities with symmetry, with floor balance. That's positioning. Spacing is our what I call functional spacing. I've borrowed that term, but is our ability to score. So really what I care about is our opponent's defensive spacing. Does our gravity, does our scoring ability correspond with our positioning? So we can pull the defense out, and now we've got space to attack the rim and collapse the defense. So I would advise coaches to first get your positioning like on point. Like, this is where we run. These are our landmarks. You see it all the time. Like NBA practice gyms have. I saw one that had a dollar sign in the deep corner. Like that's the money spot. Like, and they'll have little tape squares drawn. I saw the Bucks a few years ago had all these tape squares drawn to get to their 5-out alignment or positioning. That's the habit that I'm first trying to build when I work with a team. Get there fast, get there now. Mm-hmm. Position spacing, that's a little bit determined by our ability to score and with range.
Mm-hmm. I think for the coach too, that you're thinking, well, we can't put those things down on the floor. If you come to our gym, we've even got right now some like floor paint tape. That's
you used to use PE dots. I used to use little PE dots, right? Mm-hmm. Before we go too far, I had a question for you. I don't mean to back up the conversation.
Sure.
But I don't want to hog the conversation either. So I want you to be able to talk about your role as an assistant coach at the college level is sometimes indoctrinating players that move up from the high school level to the college level. So back to pace, mm-hmm. What do you find is the biggest adjustment for players going from high school level to college level in terms of pace? Like where are their growing pains or along those lines?
I think some of them are maybe afraid to make mistakes, and so you'll see them hold the ball and think a little bit more. And you have to be more forgiving at the beginning because they are trying to process. We've talked multiple times on this show about you're trying to get your players to think as little as possible, but that comes through the habits that are built. So we do a lot of small-sided games and having them make decisions very quickly. The other one is what a lot of people are becoming very popular now. I don't know if a lot of people are implementing this the right way, but that Greg Popovich half-second decision-making, that mm-hmm. sounds good. Like, how do I get a high school player to do that? We're talking about players that are literal world champions, and we're expecting our high school players to think in 0.5 seconds. Again, it sounds great to stand over on the sideline and yell that out. But for us, we do the 3-second count. And I like to do, I'm either catching to shoot, that's 1 second. I'm catching mm-hmm. to make a drive to the basket, that's second number 2, or I'm catching to 3 pass. Mm-hmm. And guys get that very quickly. You start 1,000, 2,000, 3. I don't have to reinforce that to them. Their
Yeah.
teammates start reinforcing that to them.
Yeah, a
And
good friend of mine, Ryan Smith, he calls that the count method, which that's a
it's great
yeah,
reinforcement.
it's
Awesome.
simple
And
simple teaching tool.
yeah.
First,
Yes.
second, third order of thinking, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think just that idea of actually playing faster, that they just are not used to it. For me too, a lot, you have to think of the fact that we're hopefully getting some of the better players from their high school teams.
Yeah.
The better players have had the ball in their hands longer, and their coaches have been okay with that. But they come to me and they're equals with the other five or the other four that are on the floor. And so you don't get to dribble. You don't get to change directions 3 times at the college level.
Right.
If you've got one change of direction, if you go twice, you're probably going to get it stripped by a help defender on the other side. So,
Yeah.
I think just those kind of tangible things for them to see when I hold the ball or when I am slow to make a decision with it, or I try to do too much with it, bad things happen. And we know that, but at the college level, every level you bump up, you can get away with less and less and less.
Yeah, I know Gino REM, the UConn women's coach, of course, he has some famous rants about, a high school All-Americans obviously come to him, like the tip of the spear he gets, right? And he often talks about freshmen, like what you're calling a run, I call a jog. What you're calling a run, like so on and so forth, like your definition of sprinting and mine don't quite match up. So I do know that I've heard some things from college coaches about, like, all right, this steps up a whole nother level. So,
and that's reflective in whatever you ask every freshman after they've played for about half a semester. What's your biggest difference? Well, the size of the players and the speed of the game. Like, it's the same response every single time. So definitely playing faster. I totally agree with that.
All right, now let's go back to where we left off. I just wanted to get that in there because I do think
that's good.
What I wanted to do when I coached was, like, hear those responses from, say, maybe a coach that coached at a level above me and be like, all right, if this guy ever recruited one of my guys or my girls, he wouldn't be able to say that about her or him, right? Like, because I'm here, I want, like, this guy already knows how to play fast. He came from this program. That's sort of the branding I wanted to put into my, like, it was an adjustment if you got one of my players. That was my goal. I don't know that I got there every time, but if I wanted my definition of sprint to be the same as Gino's, like not high school sprint. Yeah.
So the teacher inside of me wants to simplify this as much as possible. I don't intend to oversimplify it, but maybe I'm going to.
Let's do it.
I like to say that we're just simply, with our spacing and with our pace, we're trying to create advantages on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those that are listening necessarily understand the advantage, small advantage, big advantage, but if you want to kind of talk about that, but then also the fact, like, how do I go about? I've got my players positioned where I want them to, spaced where I want them to, based off their skill set. But now what? Now what am I? Are we just like, I'm going to out talent you and get to the basket and score?
Well, no, maybe, but that can work for some teams. But I would say, again, I gave the rubric of transition offense a moment ago of what we're looking for: width, depth, ball speed, player speed. When we show up in half court, I'm grading our what we look like against a model that I want us to look like. The first thing I'm grading is our construction. That's the first check mark I want to make. Okay, if we're 4 out, we got the deep corners, high slots with a ball side post or whatever you're doing with your interior player. If we're 5 out, whatever shape that looks like, corners, wing top, or square top, corner, one of, double side, single side, whatever. Did we arrive in our construction? Check. We want to habitualize that to where over and over and over again, more possessions, way more possessions than not. All right, we're coming down the court and we're hitting those spots. So that's the first thing that I'm looking for. The next goal, to answer your question, would be penetrate. So I'm grading a possession on construct 1, penetrate 2. So how you achieve that penetration could be innumerable. Well, not really innumerable. you typically use an action, whether that be like you see NBA teams come down, they get two guys in the corners. The guy that rebound is trailing the play. He sets a drag ball screen for the ball. So they've constructed by hitting deep corners and two side, single side. They, drag ball screen. The guy drives or they hit a roller. That's penetrate. So construct, penetrate, and then execute our decision making behind penetration. That's it. So we create space in transition. We hit those spots. That's construct. The next goal is penetrate. That doesn't have to come via an action. It could be just dribble penetration. It could be we reverse the ball a couple times, cut a player, and drive into a gap or something like that. Like whatever we do after we've constructed should be about achieving penetration. And then thirdly, it's about the decision making behind the penetration. We execute that properly. So we attempt to penetrate with the aim of scoring at the rim. And the players that aren't in that penetration action are creating space with their positioning. They're staying out of the way, simply put. Or they're cutting in a manner that manipulates a would-be helper. All right, then that player that's penetrating, whether we penetrate with a pass or penetrate with a dribble or penetrate with a cut, is their hope and aim is to score at the rim. But if help shows up, now it's decision time. We throw where the help came from, and then we get to that like half-second basketball you're talking about. We shoot first, drive second, pass third, something like that, right?
Here's the thing that I like about all of this. Everything that you've mentioned, everybody is sitting there that's watching and listening, and they're like, yeah, we understand that. That's how basketball has been played for like the last 20 years. I have personally felt that this kind of offense, when you start teaching conceptual offenses, you end up packaging all of that together. Because what I have found is we've treated too many things like quick hitters, like, okay, we're going to go do this time. Whereas these conceptual offenses are putting, it's like going out, and I've never done this, but like figure skating and just working on triple axels. That's great if you can do triple axels, but if you can't do a whole performance, you're never going to win the gold medal. Mm-hmm. And so for this, putting the whole thing together, whether that's, okay, we're going to incorporate blur screens, we're going to have some dribble handoffs, we're going to every now and then maybe use like a ball screen off of a bounce out or something like that. We're going to use a back screen off some action. Yeah. It puts everything together. And once you get the system together, the players, again, aren't just trying to go out and execute triple axels. They are just simply practicing basketball.
Yeah. So I think there's certain offenses where the play scores, right? Like we call the play, we get in our box or our 1-4 and we see cut, screen, boom, 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 pass, layup. Like, yay. Like the play scored. Yeah. In this brand of offense, maybe that's not the case. If you look at just like on paper, it's like, okay, this guy passes here, he cuts there, this guy fills and he cuts there, and like there's not like something that's a play that works. It's concepts to manipulate, create, expand space, and the player scores. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the nuanced difference, that the players score rather than the play scores.
Yeah, and this is where I would like to pull the poll back up again. Sure. Because this is, I ask the key word, I put this in there on purpose. What's your primary style of offense? Yeah. For the ones that replied and says, well, I use a combination of all of those. Yeah, I do too, but I don't use those all equally. Right. And this is where, again, I'm biased.
Yeah, you force them into an answer. Yeah, primary, right? Yeah.
And I think that a lot of coaches are coming to the realization when we play out of concepts in our normal offense, this gives us opportunities. And it's not that those other things like a set play, you and I, before we got on here, we're talking about, there are some great times for set plays, like after a timeout or the first play of the game or something like that, where you want to get the ball into certain guys' hands. And so you are going to run certain actions, but it just becomes very difficult. And it goes to our point of, if you're going to play with pace and space and things are going to transition quickly to the next component of the game, you can't just keep chunking things. We're going to run a set play. That didn't work. Okay, let's pull it back out and run another set play. Especially for those of us that are playing with a shot clock, it doesn't necessarily work. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I would encourage some to go back and listen to this. What set plays and sometimes what continuity does is it's player number 1, player number 12. And I don't want that. I want everybody in here. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the conceptual offense, as you practice these things and work on decision making, and everybody is working on these things. Just look at our box scores. You will see that our box scores are 4 guys or 5 guys. There are a lot of nights where 5 guys are in double digits because of this. People are sharing the ball. Everybody's playing. Everybody's getting opportunities, and it's allowing for a lot of people to be successful and impact our offense.
Yeah, to play this way, you kind of have to adopt this mantra. We don't care who scores as long as Bob Jones University scores.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't care if you get 22 or you get 22 or whatever. Like, whoever the advantage knows not where it will land. Right. So we drive, we kick, we move it. Boom, boom, boom. Pass, shot. It's you. Happen to be you. Great. Who cares? Right. I want to talk about a little mechanism or a diet, if you will, I put myself on as a coach. You don't have to do this. It's not like a rule, right? It's like if a coach has to have a code, some things that they just won't do, even though they can, right? For me, the dividing line, back to the poll, was your point. There are good opportunities to use each of these categories: set plays, continuity, conceptual. The dividing line, the diet I put myself on, Randy, this is what I'm not going to do as a coach. I am not going to, even though I can by rule, plenty of coaches do it, champion coaches do it, all that, yeah. Even though I can, I'm not going to call a play in a live ball change of possession. That's a diet I personally put myself on, a code that I coached by. So meaning, we get a defensive rebound and make an outlet, and we're running lanes. I'm not going to stand up on the sideline and go, whoa, 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 Arkansas, or box 4. Or even if we get scored on, which is a live ball change of possession, the ref doesn't have to touch it, right? So it comes through the net. On any live ball change of possession, we're running to spots, we're flowing to concepts, period. That's a diet I put myself on. You don't have to do that. That's not in the rule book. It's something that I imposed upon myself because this is what it did. It made me, that's a constraint that I put on myself that made me have to go back to the practice gym and prepare my team to play that way. Because I had a rule that I imposed upon myself where I'm not going to do that. Dear Lord, the whistle blows in a high school basketball game every 14 seconds. Someone travels, the ball goes out of bounds. You guys, if we played longer than 2 minutes without a whistle, someone would have a freaking asthma attack, right? So there are ample times to where you're going to start a possession from a stop.
Yeah.
We're playing defense. The other team double dribble, white ball going that way. Now you're starting from a stop. That's a dead ball change of possession. We're beginning from a stalled and static start. Call your play. You need the play. You need the concept. You need the action to create the advantage. On the live ball, our pace, our space creates the advantage. That's the dividing line that I imposed on myself. And I tried to follow it even in crunch time. The 15 seconds to go in a close game. I was like, we've done this all year. This is what we do.
Not to mention, I mean, you kind of alluded to this without saying it this way. You're basically allowing the defense to go ahead and set up, and you are eliminating any advantage that you potentially had.
Yeah, we allow them to get to what's next first.
Yeah,
they get to defense before we get to offense, and now I've got to use a mechanism of what we call plays or sets or ATOs to create an advantage. That's, to me, that's the diet I put myself on.
Yeah, that's good. Did have one question here. Coach asked, when you're running conceptual, if you have a player who needs more shots, how do you approach that?
You want to tackle that?
I found that the ball actually just found the guy. It wasn't something that I had to be intentional about. There was still, even though we had a lot of guys in double figures, the leading scorers were still the leading scorers. There are also some things that you can do to manipulate it without getting into like details. Coach, I don't know what you call this, but like the fan action there at the top. So if we had a point guard, instead of him coming down the floor, giving the ball up and maybe not seeing the ball for another 3 or 4 passes, he would pass, fan out to the wing,
side, yeah,
and then get the ball right back. So that, I mean, there are, again, offense. This is what I made a comment about this in a chat that I was doing a while back. But like, we like plays. We as coaches think we like plays. You don't like plays. You like actions. There are actions that if you actually study plays, there's a reason why everybody likes a hammer play. It's because of the action that comes at the end. There's a reason why everybody likes stagger screens. It's because of the consecutive actions that are hard to guard.
Yeah.
And my point is that within your conceptual offense, you can quickly find which actions are going to get the ball to certain guys.
Yeah.
And I have found that the players will actually sometimes manipulate those actions. If it's a player that I don't want manipulating that action, I'll call them out on it. If it's a player that I'm okay with manipulating that action, I don't even address it. I just let him do that.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's kind of, again, I just feel like the ball still does find the guys that it needs to sometimes. And if it doesn't, then go ahead and stop that as a coach and say, no, instead of running this blur screen, we need to make sure that we're going one down to get the ball to the guy down in the corner.
Yeah. I would say too, I kind of just touched on it previous to this question is okay, in the, again, plethora of opportunities in a high school basketball game that the possession starts with a dead ball start, call your play for your stud player. Like that's,
yeah,
get that, he's going to get all those, right? Or she's going to get all those.
Yeah.
But I would also say that like, and no offense to this coach that asked this, but I would say you're already kind of entering into your dalliance into this style of play is already getting off to a start that you don't want to go down, because this is a style of play that, again, we don't care who scores unless LCHS scores.
Yeah.
So just that question is already kind of like, coach, maybe keep moving along, not to be mean or dismissive, but like, I get what he's saying. And again, I have had the same sentiment as you, is like our leading scorer was the same player from when I took over to the year before. And there's a story from the NBA too about, there was a player, I think it was Scotty Williams, that played for the Bulls alongside Jordan. He averaged like 9 points a game. And the New Jersey Nets, I read the story, the New Jersey Nets traded for him, right? And thinking, oh man, if he averaged 9 points a game of coming alongside Michael Jordan, we're going to go pay him these millions of dollars, give him a long-term contract, bring him here, and he's going to be a star here. You know how many points he averaged at New Jersey? 9 points a game. Like that, your best players will figure it out. Don't worry about your best player. Yeah. Like, try not to worry about that. They'll get their shots. They'll be the ones that can create more advantages. They'll be able to attack better. They'll be fine. Yeah. What you really got to bring up now is your floor, because now we're going to be driving, kicking, moving, passing, cutting. We don't have this joystick controlling who gets shots. My best player will be fine. Yeah. What I really got to bring up now is you, and you who've been deferring to him for all these years, because that you're going to get shots.
Which is what terrifies some coaches, which I understand.
And I do too. And that's why I would say that there's some intentionality that goes into building a program around playing this way. Yeah. It takes time, and you're trying to build nobody wants to get in a ground war with China. Right? Yeah. They got too many soldiers. That's what we're trying to create. Like, my best players will be fine.
Yeah. Here's the last one. Is in your game philosophy, Coach Guerrero. In your game philosophy, what do you consider a small advantage and a big advantage?
Well, I'm not the expert on this. There's a guy out there named Brian McCormick who wrote a great book about this. So I would refer you to his book called SABA, S-A-B-A, that really goes into great detail about what that is, but just my simplified version of thinking that would be like a player a player driving to the basket with a player defending him would be a small advantage. Like something's happening here that potentially could lead to a score. Small advantages tend to score more at the rim. We don't than from distance. Big advantage simply means a guy has the ball with space and or time, which is sort of the same thing to make a decision. So just to give you a really simple example would be like a simple drive and kick. Tony's driving to the basket. He's got his shoulder on his defender's chest. He's sort of got a corner turned. He hasn't just blown by him, but he's got a small advantage. He's getting the ball downhill. I'm in the corner. My man helps. He sees that small advantage potentially turning into a score at the rim. My man helps. Tony kicks to me because my man helped in. I catch with a big advantage. Space equals time. That's one example. Yeah. Another example might be like a mismatch, a size mismatch. Mm-hmm. If I'm a big post, I've got a small guy, they say mouse in the house or something like that down in the post. Am I guarded? Yes, I'm guarded, but I have a small advantage based on just the physical mismatch.
And to take that a step further, I try to teach our players, and this goes into the decision making as well, to help them make better decisions. If I have the ball and I have Randy's defending me and I have Randy on my hip, then I have a small advantage, because based off of the finishes that I've taught these players, they can either stride stop or go up and finish. Mm-hmm. And there's a small advantage. If you're in front of me, there's no advantage. You've probably stopped me. I need to make a pass and give the ball up.
Yeah, that would be called neutral. Like we're neither of us, the offense nor the defense, has the upper hand. Yeah.
And that gets into finishing, which we won't talk about that for time's sake today. But I mean, even the different types of finishes, if you're on my hip versus if you're behind me. Like you mentioned, if I pick up a second defender, then I need to have recognized, my player needs to have recognized, I just created a big advantage for somebody else. I should not be shooting this. I should be making one extra pitch to the corner for that. So I think there are some tangible ways to do that, to explain that to your players so that they do make better decisions, because again, that's a phrase that we throw around, and okay, but what does that actually look like? There are some other resources out there.
Yeah, I would also add too that whether it's small or big, you must use it.
Yeah,
you must use it. So like if I catch the ball, and my guy's getting back to me, he's got a 10-foot closeout to get back to me, or a 3-foot closeout to get back to me, whether the advantage is big or small, I'm in that microsecond, I'm better than that player no matter who it is. Yeah. So if I hold it and let that player return to neutral, now we got to restart the advantage. So whatever that is, small or big, you must use it. Yeah. Don't squander it. Don't give it away. Maintain it, increase it, or move it.
Yeah. It's another conversation that probably could go on for several hours, and I'm sure at some point we'll have part 2 to this.
I'm just getting going, man. This is normally when I wake up. So
unfortunately, I have another meeting here that I need to get to, so we better go ahead and cut it short. So appreciate all of those that watched and participated. We'll hopefully be back again next Friday, so be on the lookout on our Twitter accounts for both the topic and also the poll that goes along with that. Randy, appreciate you getting up early to join us today.
No problem, man. And
we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. So good.
We'll see you all again this next week.